Hi class, this is Dr. Hambright. I'd like to talk to you about Chapter 1, the Introduction to Psychology. I've made you a chapter outline. This module only contains 1.1, the definitions, but next we'll talk about history, the philosophical and physiological backgrounds for psychology. 1.3 we'll talk about scientific and other areas within modern psychology, and then we'll talk a little bit about careers. So what is psychology? Is it relevant to me? Why should it matter? Aren't all psychologists crazy? Well, the original definition of psychology came about at a time when there was less distinction between the conscious mind and the vital spirit or the soul that animates the body than there is today. And the person that named it named psychology the study of the mind after Psyche, the goddess of the soul. And psychology itself is sometimes referred to as the offspring from the marriage of philosophy and physiology, because before there was a science named psychology, the people that were doing things that we would recognize as psychology, scientific psychology, and that were asking questions systematically, the kinds of questions that we ask in psychology, were either philosophers or physiologists, or sometimes they were both. So, you know what physiology is, particularly those of you that have to take A&P. Physiology is how the body functions. It's the study of objective, material, physical processes, the study of how the body works. How do I get air from the oxygen I breathe? How do I get energy from the food I eat? How do you get a person from a sperm and an egg? So it's an objective point of study. Okay? Philosophy, that's a little different. What do philosophers do besides drink heavily and argue? That's a joke. What is it they argue about? Well, is it about how about them dogs? No. Actually, they're arguing about what's the best way of knowing? What is reality? How do I know what is reality? Truth, justice. These are things that are abstract. They're abstract concepts. You can't see them, measure them, touch them. And so philosophers have for a long time been arguing about what is the best method for knowing and trying to understand some of these abstract concepts like the mind as opposed to what physiologists are interested in, which is the material physiological processes in the brain. So there's some persistent psychology, some persistent dichotomies in psychology that we'll talk about over and over, and that's this distinction between objective and subjective phenomenon. Objective phenomenon are like objects, subjective phenomenon are things that are only knowable in the mind of the subject. Okay, the distinction between behavior and mental processes, and the distinction between scientific and non-scientific practices. So you'll be tired of these dichotomies by the end of the class, but they're necessary to understand where psychology came from and where it is today and why it is the way it is today. So psychology is a new field of study. It's a very young discipline. The person that named it and created it was Wilhelm Wundt, who we'll return to later, but it was born, so to speak, in 1879 in Germany. But the questions we ask are as old as the human species. And they're the same questions that you ask. Why do people do the things they do? Why did Jeffrey Dahmer kill and eat those people? Why does Kim Kardashian do whatever Kim Kardashian does? Why do I feel like this when you look at me like that? What is my mind? What's it made of? Is it made of the same stuff as my brain? These are all old questions, and this latter question is a highly philosophical question, and it's referred to as the mind-body question. And we'll return to this again and again because it is a part of what psychology is. So psychology is a science, and a science is a method of knowing. There are other methods of knowing, and we'll talk about them when we talk about research methods. But basically, the scientific method involves the systematic study of objective phenomenon and sometimes of subjective phenomenon that have been defined operationally. That's a big distinction. It's philosophical or epistemological basis in terms of ways of knowing. It involves both rationalism, the use of reason to know, and empiricism, using your five senses to know. So we'll return to all this stuff into hypothesis testing in chapter 2. So the contemporary definition of psychology is that it is the scientific study of both behavior and mental processes. It's the study of observable actions as well as of the subjective thoughts, feelings, perceptions, those sorts of processes in both human and non-human animals. And your book talks about the benefits of an education in psychology, whether it's a class or a degree. If you look at people with the degrees that your book lists, like Wes Craven, the horror movie director, and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, and Natalie Portman, the actor, um, those people couldn't be much more different. Well, they are all white, but other than that, they have very different professions. And so an education in psychology can benefit you in whatever field you end up in as a career, and even in your daily living, whether you choose to have a career or not. Because the knowledge, behavior, and skills that you get are valuable in life and in numerous professions. They involve critical thinking, the use of logic and reasoning, the recognition of your own internal biases, of logical fallacies. It involves the use of the scientific method with hypothesis testing. And it also involves maintaining skepticism constantly, questioning authority, suspension of belief, the ability to accept ambivalence and uncertainty, and the ability to weigh evidence. Okay? It also involves information literacy, the ability to understand what's a good source, what's a bad source, what's not fake news on the internet. And also broad-based communication skills, because with a psych degree, you're going to learn to write in APA style and communicate effectively, and then you'll also learn to present your experiments and your data in a professional manner. So all of these skills are useful in a variety of professions. So next we'll talk about the history of psychology, but that's that for now.